In today's floral illustration tutorial, we are drawing the bluebonnet. This is the flower of Texas, and it's also a type of lupin. And I know so many of us have a lupin that is native to our local area, so I hope you'll enjoy and draw along with me. So let's begin. I work in pencil to get started. I use a mechanical pencil. It's just an HB Bic lead in there. And I like to do a guide, what I would call a guide for the drawing. I start with the stem, and then I sort of put this area around it where the flower will be contained. And I play around with it a little bit. I do this for any flower, like a hyacinth, a lilac. You want to do that guide to show you where you're going to draw. Then I'll come back and start adding petals. The petals at the top of the flower are close and small and clustered around these tight petals that sort of form a cone shape at the top, the very top. We'll come back and talk about that in a minute. But then as they go down the stem, they get larger. I always put one usually right over top of that stem. And then I have pairs or threes of them going outwards, moving out from the stem. And where they're not so tightly clustered, I might draw some little branches connecting them, because these bluebonnets or with a lupin, part of it will be very tightly clustered, those petals, and then other parts you'll be able to see right through, and you'll see the branches and that center stem. So I'm just playing around. I'm not worrying too much about the shape of the petals. Some are oval, some are circular, some are small, some are large. I've got the general shape of the flower already contained by doing my guide. I can add some little branches wherever I need them. This is the benefit of working in pencil. You don't have to get it perfect. You can experiment and try different things. Now, moving on to the second flower, it's a little bit shorter. It's sort of in behind the first one. I'm starting with those tight petals that surround the cone of really tight petals at the very top. And then as I go down the stem, I allow there to be some more branches showing through. Their petals aren't quite as tight, but they do get slightly larger and fuller and more rounded. And I'm just filling in there. And then I always like to add a couple very loose petals at the very bottom where you can see the branches. So it's not quite part of the cluster of other petals. And then I'll add some leaves. And the leaves I like to do a guide as well. There's 5 of them. So I'll do the lines and then I'll go around and shape them. And even this, like I do an initial guide, then I do the shapes of the leaves in pencil, and then I can really refine it when I go over everything in pen. And you can do these clusters of 4 or 5 leaves in behind the bluebonnets, and you can do them, some of them smaller and some a little larger. So just try different things. You're working in pencil, and now we are ready to go over this drawing in pen. And we are going to start by creating what is called a contour drawing. A contour drawing is a simple line drawing with no shading, and you've already set that up with your pencil guide. And I like to add a little extra detail at this point. So some of those petals that are right in the front, those rounded ones that overlap the stem in the center that are really facing the viewer, those ones actually have 2 petals. So you can see here in front, I'll do another one. I'm going to place a petal in the front. It's a little smaller, and then there's that other petal in behind. And then they tend to have a little white dot or square at the center, and that's what you see me marking out. So you can see off to the side, there's all these pairs of petals, but when they face you, when they are dead on straight with the viewer, they have to sort of overlap. So that's what I'm doing. This is a detail that you could totally ignore, or you can try to capture it. And I'm going to shade those ones in a little darker once I move past the contour drawing stage and decide to add some shading. So I'm just going along doing these pairs of petals. They're either overlapping along the front or you can see both of them on the sides of the flower. I'll thicken that stem a little bit as I finish the first one, and then I'm going to move on to my second bluebonnet here. Nice tight petals at the top. They're a little smaller, a little more oval shaped. They get rounder and fuller as we go down. I'm still doing that detail of the petals along the front of the flower. The front of the flower sounds weird, but doing those overlapping petals along the stem. And yeah, I'm just filling in here, doing the guide first and then the pencil drawing and then going over and refining everything in pen. It gives you a chance to really get to know the flower, get to know your drawing, and by the time you're going over everything, you're like, I got this. I'm going to erase a lot of those pencil marks because it can get a bit messy and crazy and hard to see what you're doing. And now at this point, now that I've erased, I can add more petals where the flower looks like it might need to be a little fuller. I can decide how many leaves I really do want to place within this drawing. I don't want the drawing to get too crowded or too noisy. And I can add stems for those leaves. It's always good to do those in pencil so that they really connect even when they have to run behind a petal. You want the line to look like it connects. And so I'll do it in pencil, then go over it in pen. And I like that there's a couple leaves here, a couple clusters of leaves. I've done some of them a little bit smaller, some a little larger, and that just adds a nice detail to the drawing, and it really frames the bluebonnets. It creates this nice sort of halo of leaves around the flowers in the center. Okay, I've pretty much left those clusters of petals at the top alone till now. So what I'm going to do is draw them in pencil. You can see there's all these tiny little rounded triangles forming a larger sort of cone shape. And I just go over it in pen, do it in pencil first, then go over it in pen, and it gives a nice finished look to the bluebonnet. You also may want to fill in with some more larger petals around that tight cluster. You don't want the bluebonnet to look too sparse at the top. I find there's a very fullness of petals towards the top of the flower. And then I am going to start shading this. Now we created that contour drawing. You can leave it as a contour drawing, or you can add a little line shading. And I like the leaves to be darker than the flowers to show that they are a different color. They are green, the flowers are blue. So I just add these straight lines, coloring in those leaves. I just move my pen with the outline of the leaf to create a shading that looks natural. And then I'm going to start adding shading to the petals. You do not have to do this. You could leave the petals blank, leave them white. I'm just adding some very loose, sketchy lines. I am not overthinking this at all. I just want to create a flower that's like almost a light gray. Some of those front petals, I'm doing them a little darker because they tend to be a darker blue. I'm not much worrying about the little dot of white that's in the center of some of the petals. That's just a detail that I'm going to skip right over, but this is totally up to you. How detailed do you want to make your flower, your bluebonnet? And just a reminder that the bluebonnet is a type of lupin, so if you are in a more northern area where you have lupins, you could totally use this tutorial to draw any kind of lupin. I know there's different lupins in Europe as to what we have here in Prince Edward Island, and then the bluebonnets in the southern states. So this is a flower that we can all enjoy, a flower that so many of us know. So I think that's really cool. I'm just finishing up by darkening the centers of some of the leaves and kind of looking, do I need an extra petal anywhere? But that is all done. I really like the way that looks. This was a lot of fun to illustrate and draw, and I believe if you give it a chance, you'll be very successful with this, and it would look great in a planner or bullet journal. Well guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed learning to draw the bluebonnet or lupin. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon with a new tutorial.